Chapter 18. The Obsession. The click of Elena's apartment building door shutting echoed in the silence of the night. I stood there for a long moment watching her disappear up the stairs before returning to my car. The interior of my car felt charged, unnervingly empty now, the air still thick with the residue of her fear, her anger, and that potent vulnerability she'd tried so hard to conceal. Her scent, floral, yes, but with that deeper, intoxicating musk I'd noted at the club, seemed imprinted on the upholstery, a phantom presence that prickled my senses. I finally started the car, pulling away slowly, my hands tight on the wheel. My mind, usually clear and analytical after fieldwork, was a chaotic mess. Images flashed behind my eyes. Elena moving under Nocturne's lights, the desperate look in her eyes when she recognized me, the tremor in her voice as she spoke of the blackmailer, the passionate kiss that had sent a jolt, sharp and unexpected, through me. What the hell was that? This wasn't just a data point. This wasn't just a financial anomaly. The raw fear I'd seen in her, the resilience warring with it, it had struck something deep inside me, bypassing professional detachment entirely. The surge of protectiveness I'd felt was disturbingly intense, tangled with an undeniable physical awareness. I remembered the imagined softness of her skin, the way her lips parted when she spoke, the ragged edge of her breathing. My own pulse quickened again just thinking about it. Driving through the quiet streets as the first hint of gray lightened the eastern sky, I felt profoundly unsettled. I pride myself on control, on objectivity. Tonight I'd nearly crossed a line, not just professionally, but personally. The urge to comfort her, to shield her, had warred with the startling impulse to simply touch her, to taste her. It was madness. Back in my apartment, the silence felt heavy, accusatory. I poured a whiskey I didn't particularly want, the amber liquid doing little to calm the agitation humming beneath my skin. Sleep was impossible. Instead of heading to bed, I found myself drawn to my desk. Her file lay there, stark under the desk lamp's glare. Facts, figures, impassive data. But now, looking at her headshot, I saw more than just a subject. I saw the flicker of defiance I'd witnessed firsthand. The depth of fear hinted at in the trembling of her voice. I spread the documents out, not with the methodical purpose of an investigator, but with an almost obsessive need to reconcile the woman in these reports with the complex, vulnerable, fiery person I just had in my car. Why her? The question hit me with full force now, immediate and raw. Is it the strength beneath the dancer's grace? The jarring vulnerability she tries so hard to hide? The sheer mystery of her double life, pursued by unseen threats? It wasn't one thing. It was the dangerous, magnetic combination of it all. A cold realization washed over me. My interest in Elena was no longer purely professional. It hadn't been since the moment I saw her in that club, perhaps even before, reading the initial sparse details of her case. Tonight, dropping her off, feeling the residual charge in the air, confronting the unprofessional thoughts swirling in my head, it solidified the unwelcome truth. I was drawn to her on a level that terrified me. This is dangerous. The thought was sharp, clinical. For her, for me, the secrets. Whatever drove her to dance at Nocturne, it was a volatile mix. Getting personally entangled was reckless, a violation of every rule that had kept me effective, kept me safe. Logic dictated I pull back, increase my distance, handle this strictly by the book. But, as I stood there, the city slowly waking outside my window, staring at her picture, remembering the intensity in her eyes, the visceral current pulling me towards her felt far stronger than reason. I was caught, snagged on the edges of her mystery before the investigation had truly even begun. And the most disturbing part? I wasn't sure I wanted to get free. The path ahead felt treacherous, uncertain. Yet the thought of stepping onto it, of getting closer to Elena, held a perilous, undeniable allure. Sleep offered little respite. When I finally drifted off, my dreams were fragmented cinema reels starring Elena. Elena cornered in rain-slicked alleyways. Elena bathed in the soft glow of lamplight. Elena looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. I woke hours later, unrested, the scent of her perfume seeming to linger on me. Work became a pretense. I sat at my desk, staring at the spreadsheets that usually held my complete attention. But the numbers swam meaninglessly before my eyes. My usually sharp, analytical mind felt foggy, its intricate pathways clogged by a singular, overwhelming preoccupation. Elena. I checked my phone constantly, a nervous energy thrumming beneath my skin, a restless desire for contact. I knew, with a clarity that was almost frightening, that I was losing control. The calculated patience, the professional distance, they were evaporating like mist in the morning sun. Impulse gnawed at me. I found myself dialing her number, my thumb hovering over the call button before I forced myself to stop. The rational part of my brain screaming warnings, but the urge remained, a persistent itch demanding to be scratched. My actions felt less like choices and more like compulsions, driven by a potent, unseen force I couldn't fathom, let alone resist. "What are you doing, Julian?" The thought was a faint whisper against the roar of my fixation. The potential consequences of this entanglement, personal, professional, were laid out starkly in the recesses of my mind. I saw them, acknowledged their weight, and then deliberately, consciously, pushed them aside. They felt distant, unimportant, obscured by the blinding immediacy of my need for Elena. Where is this going? I didn't know. The future was a blur, a landscape shrouded in uncertainty. But one thing resonated with chilling certainty deep within my bones. I couldn't walk away. I wouldn't. I was caught, tangled inextricably in the silken, dangerous web Elena represented, spun from mystery, vulnerability, and an allure I was powerless against. The cost no longer seemed to matter. My reputation, my carefully constructed life, even my family name, they were chips I was willing to push onto the table. I had to be near her, to understand her, perhaps even, in some dark corner of my heart I didn't dare examine too closely, to possess her. Whatever the risk, whatever the price, I was all in. The thin veneer of professional concern or even romantic curiosity had burned away completely, leaving behind something raw, something elemental. My thoughts, once circling the mystery of Elena's situation, now spiraled relentlessly around Elena herself. Specifically, the physical reality of her, the intimacy we had brushed against, but never fully grasped, the memory of that kiss, the charged silence in my car. These moments replayed endlessly, amplified by my imagination. I closed my eyes, leaning my head back against the cool leather of my chair, but found no escape. Images flooded my mind, unsolicited and potent. I imagined the silken texture of her skin beneath my fingertips, the warmth radiating from her body. I could almost taste her, a distant sweetness on my tongue. Picture the curve of her lips parting under mine. I envisioned the surrender in her eyes, the way she might move against me, a yielding and a strength combined. My body responded instantly, betraying the turmoil within. A taut coil of arousal tightened low in my gut, making my muscles clench. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping harshly against the floor. The confined space of my apartment suddenly felt suffocating, charged with a restless energy that demanded an outlet. I paced back and forth, a caged animal driven by instinct. I needed to move, to act, to find her. The urge was visceral, almost painful in its intensity. Trying to focus on anything else was futile. My mind, usually a precise instrument, was now a canvas for vivid, intrusive fantasies, each one starring Elena, each one feeding the fire burning within me. Concentration shattered, replaced by a relentless, humming need. God, I need to be with her. The thought wasn't rational, wasn't cautious. It was primal. To touch her, to feel her response. Reason felt like a distant shore, receding rapidly as I was swept away by this current. The warnings about her situation. Who knew things? How could anything be so bad it could ruin her entire life? Was she being blackmailed? That was it. Everything else was drowned out by the sheer, overwhelming force of this physical imperative to save her. This wasn't just attraction anymore. It was a deep-seated, consuming ache, an obsession centered on the promise of physical connection, driving me forward regardless of the cliffs ahead. Caution was a forgotten language. Risk was an abstract concept, meaningless against the raw, insistent demand of my body and mind. With a sudden, sharp movement, I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door and snatched my worn leather jacket off the back of a chair. There was no plan, no formulated excuse, just a singular, burning objective. Elena. I slammed the condo door behind me, the sound echoing my own recklessness in the quiet hallway. Driving through the city streets, my knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Traffic lights blurred. Horns honked unheard. My focus narrowed to a pinpoint, the route to her apartment building. A flimsy justification tried to surface. I need to check on her, ensure she's safe from the blackmailer. but it dissolved instantly under the honesty of my true intent. I wasn't going there as her protector or investigator. I was going there as a man consumed by desire, driven by an obsession that had finally pushed me over the edge. I parked haphazardly down the block from her building, the engine still ticking hot as I cut the ignition. For a moment, I just sat there, staring up at her building, wondering if she was home, wondering what I would say, what I would do. The uncertainty sent a tremor through me, a mix of fear and exhilarating anticipation. This was it. The point of no return. I was choosing this path, consciously stepping into the storm. Taking a deep breath that did little to steady my racing pulse, I got out of the car. The midday air was cool against my flushed skin. I walked towards her building entrance, each step feeling both heavy with consequence and light with inevitability. I reached the intercom, my finger hovering over the button labeled E. Laurent. I pressed it, the buzz sounding unnervingly loud in the relative quiet of the street. Now, all I could do was wait, caught in the breathless silence between impulse and consequence, wondering if she would answer, and what would happen when she did. A crackle broke the silence, followed by Elena's voice, cautious and laced with surprise. Yes? Who is it? I cleared my throat, trying to inject a calmness I didn't feel into my own voice. Elena. It's Julian Stonewall. There was a distinct pause on the other end, long enough for me to feel my heart hammer against my ribs. Had I pushed too far? Was this the moment she shut me out completely? Julian. Her voice was closer now, tinged with confusion. What are you doing here? This was my opening, the excuse I hadn't consciously formulated, but now grasped instinctively. I think I can help you, I blurted out, but I needed to talk to you first. In person. I leaned closer to the intercom grill, lowering my voice slightly. Who's threatening you? What do they want? I convinced myself this face-to-face was necessary. The only way to cut through the layers of suspicion and circumstance. To break down the wall she kept so firmly in place. To find out the whole story so I could help her. Another pause. Then the distinct sound of the buzzer unlocking the main door echoed in the quiet street. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by a fresh surge of adrenaline. She was letting me in. I pushed the heavy door open and stepped into the dimly lit lobby, the scent of old wood and polish filling the air. I took the stairs two at a time, the restless energy from earlier finding a new focus. I reached her floor just as her apartment door opened a crack, Elena peering out, her expression wary but curious. She wasn't dressed for work. She wore simple dark pants and a soft sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. You caught me on a rare day off, she said, opening the door wider but not yet inviting me in fully. A spark ignited in my chest. A day off, an entire day stretching before us, free from her usual obligations. The opportunity felt like fate, a chance handed to me that I couldn't ignore. The primal urge from earlier coalesced into a sudden, audacious plan. Caution scattered like dust in the wind. I met her gaze directly, holding it, trying to convey the sincerity beneath the recklessness. Elena, I began, my voice steadier now, fueled by a desperate hope. Forget about everything for a day. Let me take you away from all this. Just for today. Let's get coffee, walk in the park. Pretend we're just two people meeting on a Wednesday. A date. Let us just be. I met her gaze directly, holding it, trying to convey the sincerity beneath the recklessness. Julian, she said, her voice tight and trembling slightly. I can't just forget anything. This isn't some fleeting problem. I'm being blackmailed. They want the entire amount by tomorrow. It's more money than I make in a year. An impossible sum. She wrung her hands, her knuckles white. And I can't even take the day off to figure this out properly. I was going to ask one of Nocturne's owners for a loan, an advance, anything to buy myself some time, but even that feels like a long shot. Elena, I offered quickly, my voice firm despite the tremor of my own anxiety. I can give you the money. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief, searching mine for any hint of deception or jest. No, Julian, I can't possibly. I couldn't ask that of you. Why not? I pressed gently, stepping closer. You were willing to put yourself in debt to Nocturne. What's so different about me? Let me help you. She hesitated, her gaze flickering between my eyes and the floor, a silent battle raging within her. Finally, a flicker of reluctant agreement, mixed with a profound weariness, crossed her features. All right, she conceded softly, the word barely a whisper. A wave of relief, so potent it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. Then, I continued, my earlier hope surging back with renewed vigor. Forget the blackmailer for the rest of the day. Forget the investigation. Forget the looming deadline. Let me take you away from all this, even if just for a few hours. Just for today. Let's get coffee at that little place you like. Walk in the park. Pretend we're just two people meeting on a Thursday, with no shadows hanging over us. A date. Let us just be. Let me show you that there can still be moments of peace, even now. The boldness of my own words hung in the air between us. I had laid my cards on the table, risking my professional standing, our fragile trust, everything, on this single, impulsive encounter. I saw surprise flicker in her eyes, followed by uncertainty. I was completely vulnerable, offering a piece of myself I hadn't intended to reveal, hoping against hope she wouldn't slam the door on it. Literally and figuratively. This is it, I thought. I knew we barely knew each other, that my feelings were developing faster than our acquaintance. But the pull I felt towards her was undeniable, a current beneath the surface of our interactions. I waited, a subtle tension tightening my shoulders, for her answer. Elena didn't answer immediately. She stood framed in the doorway, her hand resting lightly on the edge of the door, her knuckles white. Surprise flickered in her eyes, quickly followed by a guarded caution. Beneath that, I thought I saw a hint of something softer, a vulnerability that mirrored my own tentative feelings. Her hesitation wasn't a firm rejection, but it held me suspended, uncertain. Elena, I said again, my voice a little lower, more earnest. I took a small step closer, wanting to convey sincerity without being overwhelming. This isn't just about the financial audit anymore. Meeting you, it's changed things for me. I saw her breath catch almost imperceptibly. I continued, the words feeling necessary, even if premature. Seeing you dealing with this blackmail, the fear in your eyes, it affects me deeply. I want to help you, genuinely, and I find myself thinking about you, even when I shouldn't be. I came here today because I wanted to see you again, to talk to you, away from the Veridian Ballet Company. I offered a small, almost apologetic smile. Maybe it's too soon, but I wanted to be honest with you. But after last night, I just can't stay away anymore. A faint flush touched Elena's cheeks, and her gaze flickered away for a moment before returning to mine. The conflict in her eyes seemed to soften slightly, replaced by a thoughtful consideration. Her lips parted, as if she were about to speak, then closed again. The air felt charged with a fragile understanding, the unspoken acknowledgement of a connection that was just beginning to form. Her hand remained on the door, but the white of her knuckles seemed to ease. The decision was still hers, hanging in the balance, and I waited, hoping I hadn't misread the subtle signals, hoping that the honesty, however premature, might resonate. Pushing open the door of El Cafetal felt like stepping back into a familiar warmth, a sensory immersion that was a stark contrast to the cool evening air of Marietta. The humid air enveloped us, carrying the same intoxicating blend I remembered from my earlier visit. The rich, nutty aroma of roasting coffee beans, the subtle sweetness of caramelized plantains, and the savory undertones of cumin and simmering meats. The vibrant pulse of cumbia music still throbbed from unseen speakers, its cheerful rhythm a lively counterpoint to the animated chatter, a comforting hum of mostly Spanish voices rising from the closely packed tables. The vibrant ochre and deep turquoise walls still radiated a welcoming energy, the colorful woven tapestries and framed photographs of Colombian landscapes creating an atmosphere that felt both authentic and deeply personal. The small, sturdy wooden tables scattered across the terracotta tile floor were each adorned with the same bright, artificial flower, a touch that still somehow felt right in this context. It was a world away from the sterile efficiency of Stonewall development, or the hushed boardrooms I usually inhabited. I watched Elena closely as we navigated the familiar space, a subtle easing in her posture the moment we were enveloped by the restaurant's unique ambiance. It wasn't the dramatic release of tension I'd witnessed during my initial assessment of the Veridian, but a quieter settling, a sense of returning to a place of comfort. Her gaze swept the bustling counter, the steam rising from the espresso machine, with a soft recognition, a fleeting, genuine smile gracing her lips. We found a small table tucked away in a corner, offering a degree of privacy amidst the lively atmosphere. Ordering was a comfortable return to the familiar. Un café con leche for me, The rich aroma, a welcome contrast to the analytical detachment I often cultivated, and un agua de panela for Elena, its simple sweetness mirroring a vulnerability I was beginning to glimpse beneath her controlled exterior. We shared a plate of buñuelos, their fried dough and hint of anise, a comforting indulgence. The initial moments were filled with the easy rhythm of conversation, punctuated by the lively Spanish around us, a soundtrack to this unexpected detour in my discreet assessment of the ballet company. "So," Elena began, her fingers lightly tracing the design on her mug of agua de panela, "Mr. Stonewall, when you're not CFO-ing and trustee, what does Julian Stonewall do on a Wednesday?" I chuckled softly, leaning back against the worn wooden chair, the infectious cumbia rhythm a subtle undercurrent to our conversation. "Usually? Analyzing financial statements, reviewing operational reports, staring thoughtfully, perhaps broodingly, at spreadsheets." I paused, meeting her gaze, a genuine warmth overriding my usual analytical reserve. "This is a welcome deviation." "I'll bet," she replied, a hint of genuine amusement softening the guardedness I'd come to expect. "Does your version of thoughtfully staring involve calculating potential ROI on ballet slippers?" "Only when the rumored shoe damage becomes statistically significant," I quipped back, relieved by the easy smile that touched her lips. It was intriguing to see this lighter side of her, a stark contrast to the controlled intensity she exuded on stage. The conversation flowed with surprising ease, weaving between lighthearted banter and moments of genuine curiosity. I learned more about her connection to this place, the sense of community it represented, a stark contrast to the often isolated world of professional dance. She asked a few pointed, intelligent questions about the foundation's work, revealing a sharp intellect that went beyond the artistic realm. I found myself sharing a carefully curated anecdote about the challenges of managing a family foundation while trying to maintain some semblance of personal life. A carefully veiled truth. As she reached for a piece of buñuelo, her fingers brushed mine. The brief contact, amidst the vibrant energy of the restaurant, seemed to linger in the air. A subtle awareness passed between us, a flicker of something beyond the professional or the purely accidental. I watched the way her expression softened as she glanced around El Cafetal, a sense of belonging evident in her eyes. The logical part of my mind, the CFO assessing risk and return, was taking note of this connection, this unexpected human element in my discreet assessment. The rest of me, however, was simply drawn to the intriguing paradox that was Elena, the controlled dancer with the hidden fire, finding a moment of respite in this vibrant, authentic space. Leaving El Cafetal, the easy camaraderie felt like a comfortable reprieve from the complexities of the Veridian and the weight of Elena's situation. "Walk with me?" I asked, gesturing towards the door, the late March air surprisingly mild. "There's a small park just down the street. It might be a nice change of pace before the evening chill really sets in." Elena agreed readily, falling into step beside me. We strolled along a winding path, the midday sun filtering through the leaves, dappling the ground before us. The sounds of the city softened here, replaced by birdsong, the distant laughter of children, the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. Our conversation deepened as the afternoon wore on, the lively hum of El Cafetal fading into a comfortable background noise. We moved away from the initial light-hearted banter towards more thoughtful territory. She spoke hesitantly, a vulnerability peeking through her usual reserve, about her fascination with architecture, the intricate beauty she found in the lines and history of old buildings, a passion, she admitted, that felt somewhat frivolous given her current anxieties. I found myself sharing anecdotes about the more personal side of things, the often amusing dynamics of a family-run business, the endless debates with Robert about expansion plans, the well-meaning but sometimes overbearing involvement of our mother in the foundation's initiatives. I even recounted a recent, slightly embarrassing incident involving my attempts to navigate the complexities of setting up a surprise birthday party for my sister, a task that proved far more challenging than any merger or acquisition I'd ever handled. It was a glimpse into the more human, less analytical aspects of my life, a deliberate attempt to offer a connection beyond the circumstances that had brought us together. I carefully steered clear of any direct mention of the Veridian or its financial intricacies, wanting this stolen afternoon to be a genuine respite for her, a space free from the looming shadow of the blackmailer and the complexities of her own situation. As we navigated a slightly more crowded section of the path near a fountain, I instinctively placed a hand on the small of her back, guiding her gently through the throng. The contact was brief, protective, yet it sent a fresh wave of heat through me. I felt the slight intake of her breath, saw the faint color rise in her cheeks as our eyes met for a fleeting second when I removed my hand, The shared space between us felt charged, intimate despite the public setting. I noticed the way sunlight caught the reddish glints in her dark hair, the intensity in her eyes, when she spoke about something she cared about. The simple act of walking beside her felt profound, a quiet connection forming, step by shared step. Our path led us towards an open, grassy area where a small group of street performers had gathered an impromptu audience. A juggler, slightly clumsy but enthusiastic, was attempting a complex routine involving brightly colored clubs and a unicycle. One club went flying, landing harmlessly near our feet. I picked it up, handing it back with a wry comment about gravity having a personal vendetta. The performer, grateful and slightly flustered, incorporated us into his act for a moment, tossing a, thankfully soft, ball towards Elena, who caught it with surprising dexterity before tossing it back. The shared, spontaneous moment broke into genuine laughter, easy and unburdened. The tension eased, replaced by a comfortable camaraderie. We lingered for a while, watching a caricaturist sketching tourists with swift, exaggerated strokes, and listening to a lone musician playing soulful blues on a saxophone. I found myself making witty observations about the passers-by, and Elena countered with sharp, funny insights of her own. I loved the quickness of her mind, the spark of humor that the stress of her situation usually kept hidden. Standing beside a flower stall overflowing with vibrant spring blooms, Elena paused, inhaling the sweet fragrance of lilies. "They're beautiful," she murmured. I watched her profile, the soft curve of her cheek, the way she seemed momentarily lost in the simple pleasure of the scent. I saw a glimpse of the woman she might be, without the constant fear hanging over her. Across the small space separating us, our eyes met again. This time, the gaze held. A silent acknowledgement of the day's unexpected magic. A shared understanding that transcended words. The air felt thick with possibility. Hunger eventually drew us away from the park. I led us to a small bistro tucked away on a side street, its outdoor tables shaded by large umbrellas. The ambiance was quieter here, more intimate than the bustling cafe. We ordered salads and shared a basket of warm bread, the conversation flowing easily now, punctuated by comfortable silences. Perhaps emboldened by the wine I had ordered, or simply the relaxed atmosphere, Elena began to share a little more. She spoke not of the recent threats, but of her childhood fascination with discovering hidden courtyards and forgotten alleyways in her old neighborhood, sketching them in notebooks she still kept. It was a small window into her past, offered tentatively. I, in turn, found myself lowering my own guard, offering glimpses into the quieter corners of my life. I talked about the surprising satisfaction I derived from tackling the weekly crossword puzzle in the Sunday paper. It wasn't exactly a thrilling hobby, but I enjoyed the methodical process of deciphering clues, the way seemingly disparate words could interlock to create a coherent whole. There was a certain logic to it, a puzzle to be solved within the confines of black and white squares, a familiar comfort in a world that often felt far more chaotic. As she spoke, gesturing with her hands, I reached across the small table, my fingers brushing hers where they rested near her water glass. This time, the touch was less accidental, more intentional. She didn't pull away. Instead, her gaze lifted to meet mine, searching, questioning. I held her gaze, letting the warmth spread from our joined hands. A silent conversation passing between us. The desire I felt was no longer just a physical ache. It was intertwined with a growing tenderness, a genuine connection forged over shared bread and quiet confessions. I wanted nothing more than to lean across the table and kiss her, but the promise I'd made, to myself, held me back. The afternoon began its slow descent towards evening. We lingered over a final glass of wine, the earlier easy chatter subsiding into a more contemplative quiet. The bistro had emptied slightly, the sounds of the city filtering back in as the day wound down. The sunlight slanted lower, casting long shadows across our table, turning the white wine in Elena's glass to liquid gold. The physical awareness between us hadn't faded. If anything, it had intensified in the quieter moments. I found my gaze repeatedly drawn to her mouth, the way she absently bit her lower lip while thinking. I noticed the faint pulse fluttering at the base of her throat. Every small movement seemed amplified, charged with unspoken energy. I had to consciously stop myself from reaching out, from tucking another stray strand of hair behind her ear, from tracing the line of her jaw with my thumb. I could feel her awareness of me too, in the way she sometimes avoided my direct gaze, only to have me catch her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking. The air between us hummed, thick with the things left unsaid, the possibilities unexplored. The day had been perfect, a sunlit island in the midst of our respective storms. But the edges of reality were beginning to creep back in. The unspoken question of, what now, hung between us, delicate and heavy. I knew I had to end it soon, before the spell broke entirely, before the temptation to push further became irresistible. We walked back towards Elena's apartment building in a comfortable, charged silence. The streetlights flickered on one by one, casting pools of warm light on the pavement. The easy rhythm of our steps matched, a silent synchronicity. At her entrance we stopped, turning to face each other beneath the soft glow of the porch light. The intimacy of the day culminated in this moment, the air thick with unspoken desire. I could see the question in her eyes, the same vulnerability and longing I felt reflected back at me. I could lean in, close the small distance between us, taste the kiss that had been hovering just out of reach all day. The urge was a physical force, pulling me towards her, but I held back. I took her hand, my thumb gently stroking her knuckles. Her skin was soft, warm. "Elena," I said, my voice low and sincere. "Thank you. For today. For trusting me." I met her gaze, wanting her to see the truth in my eyes. Everything I said earlier, I meant it. All of it. I saw the slight tremor in her hand, the way her breath hitched. I squeezed her fingers gently before releasing them, taking a small step back, creating space, offering respect. This was, I searched for the right word, important. To me. I offered a small, genuine smile. "Get some rest. I meant what I said about protecting you too." I paused, letting the promise settle between us. "I'll see you tomorrow." The statement was simple, factual, yet carried the weight of my commitment, both to her safety and to exploring whatever this connection between us was becoming. It left the physical tension unresolved, a promise hanging in the air. But it also offered reassurance and respect. I watched her nod, her eyes searching mine one last time, before she turned and disappeared inside, leaving me alone on the darkening street, the memory of the day and the anticipation of tomorrow, burning brightly within me. I walked back towards my car under the deepening twilight sky, the warmth of the day spent with Elena still clinging to me like a borrowed coat. But as the distance between us grew, the comforting glow began to fade, replaced by a chilling clarity. The echo of my own words, "I'll see you tomorrow," hung in the cool evening air, a promise laden with implications I hadn't allowed myself to fully consider until now. I slid into the driver's seat, the familiar scent of leather and stale coffee grounding me, but my mind was racing. What had I done? I'd spent the day utterly captivated, willingly discarding years of ingrained caution and professional ethics. I'd laid myself bare, confessed feelings that blurred the lines between protection, attraction, and outright obsession. I'd walked right up to the edge of a precipice and, instead of pulling back, had promised to return tomorrow. For a fleeting moment, the CFO in me, the man accustomed to assessing risk and managing exposure, struck me with a cold, hard dose of reality. I saw the situation with the detached objectivity I usually reserved for analyzing a distressed asset or a potential hostile takeover. My actions today, showing up unannounced, the impulsive offer of financial assistance, this entirely unscheduled and emotionally charged afternoon, were not just outside the bounds of professional conduct. They were fundamentally illogical and potentially detrimental to the very situation I was ostensibly trying to resolve. I had willingly, recklessly, allowed personal feelings to cloud my judgment in a sensitive situation involving an unknown blackmailer. I hadn't just deviated from my discreet assessment of the Veridian's finances. I had allowed Elena to become more than just a subject of inquiry, more than just a potential vulnerability within the company's structure. Why? The question hammered at the logical core of my being. Why her? What was it about Elena Laurent that so completely bypassed the carefully constructed walls of my analytical mind? I tried to dissect it, grasping for a rational explanation. Was it simply the intriguing inconsistencies I'd observed? The fierce control juxtaposed with moments of unexpected vulnerability? Much like the ballet company's impressive artistry, masking some concerning financial irregularities? Was it the sharp intellect I'd glimpsed beneath her guarded exterior? A mind that appreciated the elegant logic of a well-structured argument as much as the emotional resonance of a performance? Or was it something far more intangible? A resonance that defied financial modeling and risk assessment? A connection that seemed to bypass the usual channels of my carefully ordered world? I scrubbed a hand over my face, the brief illusion of normalcy we had created dissolving into the stark awareness of my increasingly irrational preoccupation. Who could I even discuss this with? My usual confidants were business associates, contacts within a world where emotional entanglement was a liability, not a strategy. Confiding in Robert would likely elicit a raised eyebrow and a pointed lecture on maintaining professional distance. Admitting this level of personal investment would be acknowledging a critical vulnerability, a breach in my usually impenetrable defenses. I was utterly alone in navigating this unexpected emotional terrain, trapped within the echo chamber of my own increasingly illogical thoughts, a CFO, struggling to reconcile the cold calculus of finance with the unpredictable equations of the human heart.
"You're losing control," the internal voice stated, flat and cold.
"You're becoming someone else." The realization terrified me. The man who meticulously planned every move, who valued logic and detachment above all, was being steadily eroded by this overwhelming tide of emotion. I saw the path stretching before me, shrouded in uncertainty and undeniable risk. I was terrified of where it was leading, of the potential wreckage. And yet, even as fear coiled in my gut, the thought of turning back, of not seeing Elena tomorrow, felt utterly impossible. I was caught, fighting a battle against myself, and sickeningly, terrifyingly, I knew I was losing. I finally started the car, the engine rumbling to life in the quiet street. I pulled away from the curb, driving automatically through the familiar roads as the last light bled from the sky. The memory of Elena's tentative smile warred with the cold dread seeping back into my bones. That dread now had a name, sharp and distinct. The blackmailer. The days spent wrapped in a fragile bubble of connection had only served to heighten my awareness of the viper coiled just outside it.
The thought of the blackmailer, of this shadowy figure wielding power over Elena, tormenting her, ignited something fierce and unfamiliar within me. It wasn't the detached concern of a trustee assessing a potential threat to a company asset. It was a raw, protective anger. This individual wasn't merely jeopardizing the well-being of someone connected to the Veridian. They were causing Elena, the woman I'd spent the afternoon with, the woman who had unexpectedly begun to occupy a significant space in my thoughts, genuine distress. The desire to ensure the company's stability had now intertwined with a more personal, almost visceral need to see her safe. And then, a darker thought surfaced. What if the payment wasn't enough to send the blackmailer away? I needed to confront them directly, taking matters into my own hands. The blackmailer had become more than just the antagonist in Elena's story. They were the symbol of everything keeping me from her, the embodiment of the fear in her eyes. Overcoming the blackmailer felt intrinsically linked to claiming Elena. "You won't touch her," a possessive rage pulsing hot beneath my skin. "You won't have her." I clenched my fists, the need to protect Elena inextricably tangled with the desire to possess her, to eliminate any threat that dared come near. I was willing to fight, to put myself directly in the line of fire. The fear I'd felt moments ago about my own loss of control hadn't vanished, but it was now overshadowed by this burning, dangerous drive to protect what I increasingly, desperately, considered mine. At the next red light, I unlocked the glove compartment, pulling out a burner phone I hadn't touched in years. A relic from a past life I'd tried to leave behind, connected to contacts who operated deep in the shadows. My fingers trembled slightly as I keyed in a number stored only in my memory. Each digit felt like a betrayal of the man I used to be, the professional with strict ethical boundaries. But that man felt like a ghost, distant and irrelevant. The only reality was Elena, the threat against her, and my overwhelming need to act now. The call connected after a few tense rings. "It's Stonewall," I said, my voice low and gravelly, stripped of any preamble. "I need information. Untraceable. On an anonymous blackmailer threatening someone I know. High priority. Name your price." I listened numbly to the voice on the other end. Cold, calculating, devoid of emotion. I agreed to terms that would have made me recoil in disgust just weeks ago. Exorbitant fees, morally gray methods I couldn't directly sanction, but implicitly accepted by making the call. I was outsourcing the hunt, unleashing forces I couldn't fully control, all driven by this consuming fire for Elena. I snapped the burner phone shut, the click echoing loudly in the car as dusk settled outside, painting the skyline in shades of bruised purple and gray. There. It's done. No going back now. The afternoon with Elena replayed in my mind. Her hesitant smile, the brief touch of her hand, the unexpected openness in her conversation at El Cafetal. It was a departure from the usual calculations and projections that occupied my thoughts during this commute. I had stepped outside the carefully defined parameters of my professional life, offering a level of personal engagement that felt uncharted. The potential implications of this unexpected detour were still unclear, a series of unknown variables in an equation I hadn't intended to solve. A flicker of something akin to unease, mixed with a hesitant anticipation, ran beneath the surface of my thoughts as the familiar landmarks of my route passed by. It was a quiet acknowledgement that I was navigating unfamiliar territory, a landscape where spreadsheets and financial models offered little guidance.